radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Good evening, Fade to Black. How you doing? How you doing? Today's Monday, September 30th, 2024. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, kicking off another great week here on Fade to Black. Help support the show. Get yourself a Fade to Black t-shirt. The links are below. Get a Game Changer membership. The links are below. All those t-shirts include shipping, and they're all autographed. So get yourself a t-shirt today. Get a Game Changer membership. The links are below. Very interesting week this week on Fade to Black. I've got 2 PhDs and 4 doctors. Yeah. And I'm looking at this. This is going to, because I don't have any letters that follow my name. I don't even have a junior. I've got nothing there. And so I guess Michelle just decided, let's test Jimmy this week. Let's just see what his brain can handle. It's going to be an amazing week. Tonight, Tok Thompson is with us. We are going to be talking about posthuman folklore and all of his research and studies into this. Get ready. It's going to be a fantastic conversation tonight. Tomorrow night, Kevin Randall is here. Haven't had Kevin on the show in a while. We're going to be discussing all things UFO tomorrow night. Wednesday night, Richard Spence is here. We're going to be talking about secret societies in America. Yeah, that is Wednesday. Thursday, Rick Leskowitz is here. We're going to be talking about life energy, the mystery of life energy. So an amazing week coming up. For now, I have got 3 major events coming up over the next few months. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to Peru and Bolivia with Brian Forrester. That's November 15th through the 27th. Now, I guess that's a month away. And then right after that, the Conscious Life Expo. I am hosting it again this year at LAX at the Hilton Hotel. That is February 7th through the 10th, 2025. And then right after that, I am going to head out, kind of host. I'm also going to present at Rise of the Guardians. That's March 29th and 30th, 2025 in Sedona, Arizona. Got a couple of other events right now that we're getting tied down, and I'll keep you posted on all of that, and I'll get you links to everything. All right. So there you go. Now I had a comment. I just popped this up in the chat. Now, if I recommend a movie, it's good. All right. That's it. You're not going to watch a movie that I recommend and come away from that going, oh, why do you do that? That kind of sucked. No, I recommend a movie. It's great. And I just watched a time travel movie, and it's called Omni-Loop. It was just released, and I finally had the time to watch it, and I did. I watched it last night. It's incredible. Now, this isn't it's time travel for sure. It's heavy science, and it's very fun. I'm going to say melancholy too as well. That's it. Just watch it. It's excellent. It is an excellent movie, and under the radar, but it's just released on streaming. I'm not a paid promotion guy. That's not what's going on here. It's called Omni-Loop. All right. Check it out. All right. Tonight, Tok Thompson is with us. I've called this show, I stole the title from Dr. Thompson. posthuman folklore. I'm going to find out what that actually is. We're going to explore the fascinating realm of posthuman folklore. We're going to dive into the emerging technologies, artificial intelligence, transhumanism thrown in for good measure, and how all of this is reshaping traditional folklore. Now, check this out. He was born and raised in rural Alaska. I just got back from Alaska, last week, 2 weeks ago? At the age of 17, he began attending Harvard College, where he received his bachelor's degree in anthropology. He received a master's degree in folklore from the University of California, Berkeley. 3 years later, a PhD in anthropology from the same institution. After receiving his PhD, Tok engaged in a 2-year postdoctoral position with the Center for Irish-Scottish Studies at Trinity College over in Dublin, where he helped launch a new M.Phil in translation studies. He also researched Irish language traditions in are you ready? In County Fermanagh and taught classes for the University of Ulster. In the fall of 2006, he came back to the States to USC, where he has been teaching graduate and undergraduate courses in folklore and related topics. Additionally, he has taught folklore as a visiting professor at universities in Northern Ireland, Iceland, and Ethiopia. While in graduate school, he co-founded the journal Cultural Analysis and Interdisciplinary. Oh, man. I decided before the show I was going to do all of this, and everybody knows I normally don't do this, but it's very interesting, his journey. So, Interdisciplinary Forum on Folklore and Popular Culture, which he co-edited for 15 years. From 2013 to 2017, he was the editor for Western Folklore. He has recently published 2 books, one of his own research entitled Posthuman Folklore, that was in 2019, and another co-authored with Gregory Schrempp, a textbook on world mythology entitled The Truth of Myth. His links to Simon and Schuster are below on our website and social media. And I would like to welcome for the first time to Fade to Black, Tok Thompson. He's right there, Tok. How you doing, man?
Pretty good, Jimmy. Thanks for having me on the show. You didn't have to read the whole thing. That was kind of
man. I had to. That's a crazy journey, man. That is a crazy journey. I normally don't do it.
It is.
And everybody that watches this show and and has been a part of it for many years knows that I don't do that. I just bring on the quick introduction, and then I find out everything later. But reading through your CV and your journey, it's absolutely incredible. And we left the rock and roll part off.
Yeah, my favorite part of it is that I get back to Alaska every summer and I commercial fish. I started commercial fishing up there in the summers when I was 11 years old, and that's what my family's done, what the communities did. And I still get up there, and this year I got my kids out on the boat, so it was a great year for me. So I'm all over the place, right? I mean, I still have my heart in the backwoods of Alaska, but I spend a lot of time in other places, Ireland and certainly LA, of course, and other spots too when I can.
Yeah, so you get the first time guest disclaimer. Let's get that out of the way first, which is this, Tok. It's just you and I sitting on my couch having a conversation as friends. And where that conversation starts, it starts. Where it ends, but we're going to end as friends. Now, you have to accept so we can move on.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So you can ask me any part that you want. I'm not tied to any particular topic or anything. But choose, yeah.
Actually, I'm going to start here. Before I get to the definition of what posthuman folklore actually is, we'll get to that in a second. I just spent about a week in Alaska and Canada, and Juneau, Sitka, and Skagway, and Victoria. Went up into the Yukon and all those regions too as well. It was an amazing trip. But this is what I did. And in visiting all of these remote areas, I'm going up to the people that live there and people that I meet, and I'm going, so, ever see Bigfoot? Any Sasquatch stories? And everybody said no. and which is,
there's some pretty famous ones around my area, Kenai Peninsula. We have kind of a famous Sasquatchy guy. A few years ago, he chased everybody out of a town, Port Chatham, which is now abandoned. So the story goes.
Yeah, that's a great story. That the town is empty, right?
And supposedly they moved away because they were tired of getting harassed by this guy.
Yeah, they were getting. I heard they were getting eaten. They were getting killed. Like,
that was the report. That was the report. And they never quite figured out, what the story was. But yeah, supposedly, and this blends in with a lot of the native stories too that have kind of Bigfooty guys. I mean, Bigfoot, Sasquatch is a Native American creature, right? Sasquatch was here long before white people. I'll put it that way.
Well, when the logging community, when the white dude showed up there, right, and started building the town, the indigenous culture warned them. Said,
there you go,
man.
This is a long-standing legend. If you look at different legendary creatures, this one's been around for a while, and that gives it a bit of weight when you're looking at legends. If they've been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, and that very often gives the whole tradition a little bit more weight to it.
Yeah, for sure. And there were reports, and there's some photography too as well, that when not rescuers, but people went to the town after they were hearing the stories, the dinner tables were still set. Like they blew out of town, right? Like just absolutely up and left. And some pretty terrifying stories out of there. And the town still sits to this day, abandoned 100 years later.
Yeah, no, I grew up in Alaska. I grew up in the woods in Alaska. I've never seen a Bigfoot type creature, or the Bushmen, as they call them up there. I have a niece who swears that she saw one. Maybe she did. Maybe she mistook a bear or something. She swears no. She definitely saw a Bigfooty type guy. So there you go. I'm a folklorist. Maybe we need to say what that is, right? So I'm a professor of folklore, which is a wacky job because it's a professor job. I'm in the academy. I'm in a university. But I study things that aren't necessarily true, right? I study stories. I study what people pass along themselves. So I study ghost stories. I study alien stories. I study, Bigfoot stories. So it's kind of an interesting discipline, if you will, in the university, because most of the universities talk about what's real, right? I'm not necessarily. What I am saying is real is the stories are real. Those stories are real, right? So we can look at those. That's good scientific data.
Well, okay, that's a good place to start, actually. When we go into history, and even deep history, where the stories seem to be very similar, different names, different geography, but the story itself seems to be the same culturally.
Well, there's huge research on this. Believe me, there's the entire disciplines have been looking at, like, what is shared and what is not shared, and those are both really interesting questions. Like, what do some groups have in common in terms of their stories, and then what do they absolutely not have in common? Or another thing is, like, when a story goes from one group to another group, what changes? Because very often, like, to accept that new story, the group will change part of it.
Well, okay. So yes, exactly. And so are they all seeing, when you have things like the troll under the bridge or a leprechaun, were they seeing aliens? Right? Was there something else?
Or when people see aliens, were they actually leprechauns or trolls? Right? I mean, which one do you want to? Which frame do you want to pick?
Wow, you tell me. I'll go either way.
Frankly, a lot of stories are very, very similar, and they seem to have crossed over. Like the stories of the fairy folk, right? These small little green people that abduct people and do weird stuff, and it's ancient magic that nobody understands. And so now we have little green people that come down and abduct people, and they have high technology which we don't understand. And if you think about it, there's not that much difference between the two. Like, what is ancient magic versus high tech? Something does, some little gizmo does something happens, and we don't know how it worked, right? You could call that science we don't understand. You could call it magic. It kind of refers to the same phenomenon, right? So there are some interesting differences between the two. So the fairy folk are from the ground, usually in the ancient past, and the aliens are usually from sort of, advanced technologies, and then from the heavens, from the skies. So there's some differences, but on the other hand, there's a lot of similarities too. And like in America, aliens are very plausible. Most Americans, I think, believe that aliens are either real or at least that maybe have visited Earth even. So it's a huge belief. On the other hand, if you go over to Ireland, say with leprechauns, not so big. On the other hand, I've met a lot of people who have had personal encounters with the fairy folk, the banshee particularly and stuff. Go to Iceland, right? Iceland, like 95% of Icelanders say that they believe in their elves or Huldra folk. And then almost nobody in Iceland believes in aliens. So, which is it? Why do Icelanders think that Huldra folk are so plausible, and Americans think that aliens are so plausible?
Yeah, well, in Iceland, man, you have to have a little elf house in your backyard, right?
Right? Yeah, it's in the law. Like if you're trying to put in the road, you have to put out the environmental impact statement, and one of those is like, how's this going to impact, the hidden people?
Yes, when I read some of the facts behind that in Iceland, which I love it, I'm fully there. But here's the deal: fairies are real. That's it. Fairies are real. No,
now what the stories you may or may not be, I can lie.
No. You and I are not on the same page here. That the stories are documented fact. I'm telling you, man, fairies are real.
Oh, but what about lies? What about lies?
What do you mean?
Everybody makes it. Well, in our politics today, we see a lot of made-up stories. They're not necessarily real. It could be, in fact, fiction.
Right.
Fiction are stories that are not real, right? That's a big category of stories. And then with legends, the fun part is you don't quite know. Maybe they're real, maybe they're not. Right? So people can argue about it. Do you believe in ghosts? Do you not? Do you believe in aliens? Do you believe or not?
Right. So my first experience with fairies. Now, and you have to hear me out on this. I ride a Harley, I drive a Jeep, and I listen to Pantera. Okay? All right? That's my world. And I had this experience with these fairies, and I suddenly had a problem. Do I talk about this? Does the big, rough, tough, macho, right?
What's the story is what I would be curious about. I mean, I was at this. I was hosting an event up in the Northwest, and we get this warning. There's about 500 people there, and we go through this orientation. And in the orientation, the manager of this property, she said, "Okay, now listen, we've got fairies. So if you lose your keys, just ask for the keys back and you'll find them in your backpack." And I'm sitting on this couch like this, Tok. I'm like, bullshit. I'm not going to listen to this, right? And I was just like, no, this ain't me. This ain't me. This ain't me. And then this happens. The next day, Jason Quitt and I are sitting in the back in these two chairs. There's 500 people in front of us. I just introduced somebody on stage, and I came back. I'm sitting in the back in this chair, and I fall asleep. On this hand, I usually wear 4 rings on my hands and bracelets and stuff. But this ring here, I couldn't get on and couldn't get off. It was really tough on this finger. And so anyway, I fall asleep. That night, that was in the morning. That night, I'm back in my hotel room, and I'm taking off my jewelry. And I look, and that ring is gone. And I was like, what? I couldn't get it off, right? So anyway, I take off, and I go, and I look at my car. I look around, I'm like, what? That's weird. So the next day, I search everything. I get up in the morning, search in the car, search under the bed, I search the hotel room, can't find it. And I said to myself, okay, fairies, can I have my ring back? Right? Okay.
So I get in my car. I said it. I get in my car. I cross the street and go back to the conference, 2 minutes. And I'm walking up to the conference and I see the manager there and she's talking with a couple of other ladies. And I come up. She goes, okay, Jimmy, get started in 15 minutes. We've got coffee over here. And right as she's saying that to me, this other lady comes up and says, anybody lose a ring? I said, what? I did. And it's my ring. And I put it on my finger and I went, where'd you find this? She goes, it was under the chair in the back of the room. And I'm thinking about it. That's when I fell asleep. Now, how is it possible that this ring just falls? I couldn't take it off, just falls off of my finger and drops on the floor. And then I asked the fairies for it back. And 2 minutes later, this lady's coming up going, did somebody lose a ring? And I kept it in my head. I'm like, okay, man, this fairy stuff. Wow. Fairies are real. And I'm going to leave the story right there. I don't have another explanation for it.
Yeah. So, like, again, I'm a professor of folklore, right? So we look at these stories, we look at these different traditions. So let me just describe what, in professional terms, I would describe your story. This is what we call a memoret, which is a personal experience. So a memoret is something weird experience that people have, maybe a weird light, maybe something strange happens to them. And then the thing is, what do you make of that weird experience, right? And then very often what you find is that there's already a built-in traditional explanation. Oh, this house is haunted and the ghost did it. Now, again, I'm not saying it's not the ghost, right? Maybe it was the ghost who did it. What I am saying is that there's this relationship between personal experiences and the larger tradition, right? So you thought fairies because the guy had mentioned the fairies. If the guy had mentioned ghosts that would steal stuff, maybe you would have thought that, right? So these stories set up the expectation of how to explain weird stuff. And again, I'm not saying that the weird stuff is real or not, but you can see that relationship between the two. People have weird experiences, they don't know how to describe, and very often that's what they want. They talk about these, like, what do you think this is, right?
Right. So now I'm left with a problem. Do I go on the air and talk about this? Do I talk about fairies? Do I talk about the ring, that was lost and then miraculously appeared as soon as I asked the fairies for it back? Do I tell this story?
Like in Ireland, it'd be no problem because, in Ireland, again, the fairy tradition is still pretty strong, especially like the banshee. Do you know about the banshee tradition?
Well, tell me about it, but I'm going to end with this.
It's really a great figure. And I've met several people in Ireland. I've talked to a lot of very sober, educated people who have said that they have encountered the fairy folk. And the main one is the banshee, right? So the banshee wails right before someone in your family is about to die. Maybe you, but at least somebody in your family. So if you hear the banshee, if you see the banshee, and especially both, like, someone in your family is about to die. That's the big tradition. And there's a lot more to the banshee too, but that's how people often experience it. All of a sudden there's some weird woman wailing, and then to go back and Uncle Frank has died.
Okay, hold on. What does the banshee look like?
Kind of a ghostly woman figure very often.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. The fairy folk in Ireland are not tiny little creatures. They're ominous. They're connected with death and the other world and all sorts of interesting stuff.
Did you ever see the movie Labyrinth?
Labyrinth. Yeah, sure.
David Bowie. So the opening scene, right? The fairy comes up and bites.
By the fairies. Yeah, that's a classic old, European folktale tradition.
He goes, Holgor goes, Jennifer Connelly says, the fairy bit me. And he goes, what did you expect a fairy to do? And
there's all these sort of beliefs and traditions and stuff around them. And so, in a sense, they're very socially real still. Like, there's a lot of roads. You're going down the road and all of a sudden it curves to one side and then comes back. And that's because there was a fairy tree right there. It's like, no, you can't take that down. That's sacred to the fairies. And so they have to build around it, So a lot of place names in Ireland, a lot of personal names even are connected to this. So, the word in English is fairy, but that's kind of just a rough translation, right? So she tradition, like the banshee. So ban just means woman in Irish Gaelic, and she are these sort of ominous spirits, We talk about them as fairies in English, but it doesn't really do justice to the term.
So spirit woman.
Yeah. Yeah, spirit woman, woman of the she, and the she are again a particular type of spirit. So sort of, they're not just ghosts; they're sort of like royal ghosts. They're the aristocracy of the dead. They overlap a lot with like ancient territorial goddesses and stuff. So this tradition goes all the way back. Think about this. Ireland is, as far as I know, the only country in Europe that's named after a goddess, and most people are aware of this in Ireland. So these sort of strands go way back in Ireland. That's what first drew me to Ireland to study. I'm not Irish. I have no ancestry there, but I went, I learned the language, I tried to learn the culture and the traditions and stuff. Because there's a lot there. There's a lot of like deep historical depth to it.
Now, have you seen a ghost?
Oh, well, I'll tell you, I teach a class on ghost stories, right? And very often my students want to know if I believe in ghosts, but I usually defer that question. And I'll tell you why I do. Because then the students, want to explain, the scholarly ideas by my personal experience. And as a scholar, as a professional, I try to keep those completely separate, right? Like if you're a judge, you don't talk about your ideas on crime. Right. I mean, that's my professional identity. I keep it somewhat separate from my personal identity. But let me tell you, I mean, there's reasons I've been, interested in this stuff. Right.
Well, except right now you're not teaching a class. So I'll ask the question again. I'll ask the question again. Have you seen a ghost?
I'll defer to that question. I'll defer the question, but I will say that I have at times I have thought I have seen a ghost. There. I'll answer that affirmatively.
So you have. How old were you when this happened?
I have, yes. Let's see. I think my best example is really when I was very young, right? So like 5. So do you trust your 5-year-old, memories and representation of self? Maybe I do. Give it some weight, but I also throw in some doubt. Maybe I was, influenced. Maybe I was making stuff up. I don't know. I had a very active mind as a 5-year-old, On the other hand, I remember the experience very clearly. So, did I? I don't know. Did I think I did at the time? Yeah.
Was it inside or outside?
It was in a basement, actually. My grandparents' house. We were staying there for one winter and staying in the basement. We didn't use the basement much, but sometimes that was the only bathroom available. There was one upstairs and one downstairs. And if somebody was like in the other one and you had to go down to the basement. And that's where I kept sort of encountering this ghost in my memory, right? So yeah, that was a very impactful experience for me. And it went on for months. I was really scared to go down there. And then my dad kind of got wind of it and he was very aggressive about putting that down, I guess I should say.
What did he lock you down there or go down there with you? To prove to you that there was something there?
Yeah, that sort of thing. And, he was a dad and he had a very sort of strong personality, I guess you could say. And, he didn't entertain such notions lightly, right? So.
Right.
I mean, my dad was, my dad, I was an older dad. My dad was in World War II. He was like, so he was a macho guy from back in the day, right? I mean, I grew up on sort of an older parenting model, you might say.
Well, in your estimation, doesn't every grandmother have a ghost story?
I don't know about every grandmother, but I will say this. I teach a class on ghost stories. I've been teaching at USC for 18 years. And one of the things I make students do is go out and collect ghost stories. Very often they do it from their own family. And I've told them, and they're like, oh, no, my family doesn't have any ghost stories. I'm like, you're wrong. Just ask. There is ghost stories in your family. Just ask. And they're like, wow, I had no idea. Right. So, that could be an interesting experience. Like sometimes these kids grow up and they think, oh no, my folks are scientists. They have no ghost stories. And they ask, and their dad, who's a scientist, has this awesome ghost story. And then their minds are blown. Like, I never knew my dad, So yeah, it's fun.
So I'm like 5. And I remember this like it was yesterday. I'm at my grandparents' house in Michigan, and I'm sitting in the chair with my grandfather, Cal, in the living room. They lived in a stupidly old house in Holly, Michigan. And I could see my grandmother through the dining room in the kitchen. I see her back. She's on the other side of the house, and she's doing dishes. I'm sitting there with my grandfather. but I could see the TV was here, and then I could see into their bedroom, which was here. The doors open. All right. Now coming from, and I'm watching TV with my grandfather, so two of us. And then I hear from their bedroom like this slam, like a loud knock. It was loud. And I look straight into their bedroom door, and my grandmother, and I kind of trip, right? And I kind of look at my grandfather, and I'm looking at the bedroom door. Nobody's reacting. And my grandmother yells from the kitchen, "Cal, it's our ghost again." And she didn't even turn around. She kept doing the dishes. And I was sitting there, I was like, ghost? What? Right? And that I think that goes on in every grandparent's house in the country. I really do. They all have their stories.
About everyone, but sorry, I can almost guarantee within every family, right? If you just if you ask around your family, you'll find a ghost story or two. So that in itself is interesting. Okay, so here's one thing I find just personally really interesting about ghosts. Like most Americans believe in ghosts. Not everybody, but most surveys turn over 50%. And a lot of times people think about beliefs, like what do people believe? And they think, well, it either derives from science or maybe religious authorities. But here's an example where that's clearly not the case for either. Right? Science kind of says that we don't have any evidence for ghosts, and major religions are like, no, you're supposed to go to purgatory and wait until the day of judgment. And yet, most Americans believe in ghosts. So, that shows that people develop their belief systems from something besides, science and religion. And again, for me, that's folklore. That's what we share with each other, these stories and ideas and stuff like that.
What's the first ghost story that you tell your students each semester?
Oh, boy, that's a good one. I don't know. It kind of depends. Very often I'll tell them one and I'll ask them if it's a good ghost story. And they usually think it is a good ghost story. I can tell you if you want. It's not too long.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's just, now you got to remember I'm at a college, right? These are college freshmen. It's a freshman seminar. I always do it the first semester. So this is like their first drop into college, right? So this is a story I often start with. And I put it at USC. I'm like, well, yeah, this is a story I heard a film a few years ago at USC, freshmen coming to USC for the first time. So this is how I drop it in, right? And they were driving there. We're going to drive there. They're from Alabama. Both of them are going to drive the way, make the distance, and get there. There were two buddies who got in from the same school. And they're like, great, we'll drive together, bueno. And so they made the drive out. And one of them came from a fairly wealthy family, and one not so much. He was there on like scholarship and whatnot. And so they got there right before the campus opened, right before the semester started. So they're going to spend like 2 or 3 days at a hotel. And so the guy figured out the different hotels. One was going to a really nice hotel, and the other guy got like a kind of a sketchy downtown motel, downtown LA. And it's like, oh, yeah, just drop me off here. I'll be fine, And the guy's like, you sure, man? It's like, yeah, just drop me off. I'm fine. I'll see you in a couple of days. Right? Okay. So he drops him off and he goes back to his nice hotel and he goes to sleep, but he can't sleep. He keeps having these weird dreams. And in his dream, his friend is all like bloody and all messed up. And he keeps saying like, help me. Right. So he freaks out and he tries to call his buddy. No answer on the cell phone. He calls the motel. He remembers the name. No answer at the motel. Like nobody's picking up. It's like, oh, what do I do? He goes, drives down there. No, nothing. Calls the cops. Right. It comes to a huge thing. Finally, they find the kid's body. He had been murdered and dumped in the dumpster behind the motel. So I asked the students, is that a good ghost story? We talk about it because it kind of appeared in the dreams. Was it really a ghost? Could it just been a dream? Maybe the guy was just feeling guilty, but it's a good story to start with. And then I say, yeah, well, this is actually from classical Rome. Cicero recorded this one. I just updated it.
There is, and I love that story, right? Because there is, from the same period, there's a Greek ghost story.
Those just like great ones.
Yeah. And so when you hear the story without the ancient Greece part or Greek, right? You leave that part out and you just tell the story. And it's a story of a person looking to buy a house, goes out with the realtor, buys the house and moves in,
same story,
and chains. They hear chains clanking in the hallway at night, but there's no chains there and everything. And then you find out that the story is from 200 BC, right?
Yeah.
It's
that's a great one. So one of the ones I love, I have this little ghost story from ancient Egypt where this guy does some sort of magical writing to try to communicate with his father. And I guess there was a servant that his father used to mistreat. The father and the servant are both dead, but the kid is being haunted by the servant. And so he writes to his dead father to ask him to get the dead servant to knock it off.
It's and so the ghost stories have been around as long as we've had campfires.
Yeah, exactly. Good way of saying it. On the other hand, here's a really fun thing that not all cultures believe in ghosts. There are some cultures where no, that does not happen. That's not
which ones? What culture doesn't
there's
believe
several.
in ghosts?
So for one classic one is the Tiv of what's it, TIV. This is a North African group. There's a great article I often use in the classroom, and it's an anthropologist who goes there with a copy of Hamlet, and she's reading Hamlet, right, Shakespeare's Hamlet, while she's there. And at some point, they're like, okay, you got to tell us a story. Why don't you tell us that story of the book you're reading? And she's like, okay. So she tries to tell Hamlet, but Hamlet's a ghost story, right? That's the whole thing. It's a ghost of Hamlet's father who's been murdered. And these people don't believe in ghosts. That's not what happens when a soul dies. It can't happen. And so to them, it has to be something else. And they say it's like an omen sent by a witch, like some kind of phantasm or something. So there's several. In fact, the Catholic Church, in general, says that ghosts shouldn't exist, right? You die and your soul goes to purgatory, and we await the day of judgment. Especially early Christianity. That's one of the really defining features of early Christianity is that they was really opposed to ghosts. And so early Christianity said ghosts aren't real. You can't contact them. You can't tell ghost stories. If you did see a ghost, then it was supposedly the devil trying to trick you by sending a false message. Mm-hmm. And that was true for a long time. It was only up until like the Middle Ages that that reversed, and then the church started believing in ghosts again and doing exorcisms and things.
Well, I had I want to talk about Slenderman in just a second.
Sure. Yeah, there you go.
And yeah, there's a reason for it. So last weekend, not this weekend, but last weekend, Saturday night, I'm sitting on my back patio with a friend of mine, Lisa. And Lisa and I have been friends since we were little kids. I've known her for a long time, 40 years. And so we're hanging out. Great night, perfect night. We're outside. It's about 10 o'clock and we're just hanging. And anyway, she goes like this. And I go, what? She goes, I just saw something move in your house. It's my ghost.
Had you told her at this point your house was haunted? I just need to know.
It was, and that's the way that I choose to deal with it. There's a phenomenon going on here. I can't explain it, but I'm not interested in finding out what the phenomena is. I'm not setting up cameras. I'm not bringing in mediums or psychics. I'm not putting salt out. I do sage, though. Just a precautionary sage once in a while. But that's how I choose to deal with it. I think that science and physics has taught us and is trying to teach us and educate us about extra dimensions and the multiverse and parallel worlds and how qubits work and entanglement and locality and non-locality. All of these things.
Big questions.
Yeah. All of these things really, I mean, you start to really postulate maybe science is chasing what people have been seeing over the years, but could never prove it. And science couldn't prove it either because they couldn't see it or measure it.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, it's obvious that there's a lot of the universe we're not aware of, right? I mean, we have our little sensory apparatuses and our little rat brains, but the universe is a great big place with a lot of stuff going on, right? We're just starting to understand like quantum mechanics and quantum entanglement, and we're just starting to untangle consciousness, and we really don't even know what it is or how it's created yet. I mean, a slime mold, right? Unicellular organism, but it can remember and it can figure out puzzles. So how does it do that? And we don't even really know, right? What is that step from goopy stuff to thinking goopy stuff? And if we get there, then we're maybe making some good progress. I don't know. But, then you look at the ideas of like ghosts, for example. We're talking about ghosts. So if we're looking at like, how are they supposed to work? Like in general, not everybody turns into a ghost. So who turns into a ghost, right? Or why do people turn into a ghost? Really commonly, like, here's an idea. Okay, when is your ghost supposed to leave your body? When you die? That's usually what you hear. But exactly when? Like the moment your heart stops beating, or the moment your EKGs wind down, or does it linger for a week or so? There's a lot of traditions around the world where the soul doesn't leave right away. It sticks around the body, wherever that is, for like a week. Or in Japan, it's 49 days traditionally. And
really?
And yeah, for 7 times 7, 49 days at the,
okay.
For a lot of the Pueblo groups, 40 days, that the soul is supposed to hang around the community. And that gives people a chance to say goodbye and do all the funerary rituals and stuff. And then in some traditions, like Japanese, they invite them back again every year, right? The ancestors, right? You have the Oban festival, and it's kind of like Days of the Dead or something. You invite the dead back in for, a couple of days.
What do you think is going on? If we, okay, because there's two ways to look at it. So let's go with the phenomenon is real, but we don't understand what it is. Right.
Sure,
okay.
right. So maybe it's true, right? Maybe souls linger, or spirits, or whatever this is, consciousness, spirits. Maybe they sort of linger around the body for a while before they make their journey, right?
But do you think
they
it's
don't necessarily drop off right at once?
But the fact that sometimes they go physical, you can see them, whether it's ghostly or whatever.
Again, right.
Right.
Yeah.
So
now, I like to talk about. There's kind of two kinds of ghosts. There's the wanted ghosts. Usually these are ancestor ghosts, or beloved spouses of 50 years sort of ghosts. Right? They come back and you're happy to see them. And then there's the sort of unwanted ghosts. They're not. They're haunting you, or they're haunting your house, or they're usually upset about something. Something's gone wrong. When we think about ghost stories, we tend to think about the second part, right? Haunting ghosts and stuff. But the most common ghost story is a couple that's been married for 50 years or something. One of them dies, and then a week later, the other one, the widow or the widower, are very upset, and then their spouse reappears and says something like, "Don't worry, I'm in a much better place. Love you very much," and they disappear again. Right, so that's a ghost story, right? It's a ghost coming back, but that is the most common, and very often right around a funeral or something like that. So again, there's lots of different sorts of explanations. Maybe it's physiological, like the phantom limb, right? If you lose an arm, but you still think it's there, and you can still try to scratch it when it itches, right? So spouses that have been married 50 years used to completing each other's sentences. It's easy to see how your brain could sort of fill in for what has been there all the time. So maybe it's a mental phenomenon, or maybe not, right? Maybe this is how it sort of works. So it's fun to try to just, do nice studies of ghost stories. What sort of different categories of ghost stories do we have? How do ghosts work differently in different cultures and traditions? And you can do this. You can do this as a science.
Sure. And so when we look at today, the ability for you and I to communicate, right? This is absolutely incredible, even though we live in the same city, but it's still pretty incredible. And but the connectiveness of this audience watching this, but of course we know now that the whole world is on the internet. Your traffic lights are on the internet, your computer's on the internet, your stories, your streaming, your email, your bills, your banking, everything is on the internet. Yeah, everything. Yeah. So when you have that ability, the ideas of manifestation over the years are one thing, but then you throw in the power of the internet, where the ability to manifest is going out in nanoseconds into other people's minds.
Because when I went to grad school, internet hadn't really hit yet. It was just about to, but it hadn't. And I was going to a graduate program, a master's program in folklore, and everybody's like, "Folklore? That's so antiquated, right? It's not. We do printed material. We do literature now, And then by the time I got out of graduate school, certainly by the time I got my PhD, folklore was really cutting edge because the internet had happened. Everybody was sharing stories and stuff, and you didn't know who the author was, and you didn't know. And they're like, "Who can deal with non-authored stories?" Where folklore's like, "Hey, no problem." Right? So folklore. My discipline changed sort of overnight from being kind of an antiquated discipline to being cutting edge when the internet popped in, which is really interesting. But the other point you bring up, I want to follow up on that, because my students these days are mostly digital natives. You know, they've grown up online, right? They've grown up on broadband, right? They've a lot of their memories, their social experiences, their friendships and emotions are online. And when I've been studying ghost stories, one of the really interesting trends of the last 10 years is you start to get more of these, you know, cyber ghost stories, right? So text messages from the beyond, Alexa acting as a spirit medium, haunted servers. And so it's not old ghosts, right? Ghost of Abraham Lincoln is still in the White House as far as we know. But who is haunting the internet? You know, people that have spent a lot of their social lives on the internet, who have loved and lost on the internet. And when they died, perhaps wrongly, their spirit is now haunting the internet. The internet used to be free of ghosts when it came out. It was clean. And now there's a lot of ghosts.
Well, so Slenderman went from this thing to a worldwide phenomenon that I'm gonna be straight with you, Tok. Kind of freaked me out. Slenderman.
There's worse ones now. That was just the first one. They got worse ones now. You know?
Well, now is it possible with the power of the internet to make this stuff real? I mean, to manifest, and all this energy is focused into it, and the next thing you know, you see Slenderman in your backyard or in your rear view mirror, or worse yet, in your bedroom.
Slenderman was like, he was really interesting because he was the first, right? The first sort of digital native monster. There are a lot of other monsters people could talk about, people could tell ghost stories online, but you know, Slenderman emerged online, and he emerged in these online forums and stuff. And he haunted, you know, especially places online, offline too, but it was really the online thing. And Slenderman emerged right at the same time as the big stranger danger panic, if you remember. Everybody was sure that if your kids walked outside under unsupervised, they're going to be grabbed. And so he's kind of a part of the stranger danger panic. And so we've seen it in our lifetimes. Like you drive around the streets, and it used to be, you see after, you know, school time, you see kids playing in the streets. And now you don't, right? Because this idea that, oh no, it's not safe for them to be out because of Slenderman and people like him sort of haunting. And so now where are kids playing? Well, online. You know, how safe is that, right? So, but it does sort of, Slenderman, he really witnesses that transformation into this internet society. So he's fascinating. But like I say, there's more. There's worse now, right?
Like what? What's next?
What's happening? Let's see. Momo. Momo, have you heard of her? So this is more like a WhatsApp or text-based thing, and very often frighteningly represented as this horrific Japanese.
How do you spell
figure. It? Momo, I believe. I think that's right. Momo. Take a look at her there.
Momo, yeah. Okay, hold on for a second.
Yeah. And so this has been passed along by a lot of these sort of WhatsApp or text messaging, and very often among kids, sort of getting this message from nowhere and telling them to do horrible and dangerous things. So that's another one that's, you know, it's caused a real concern around the world all of a sudden, right? So now everybody in the world is dealing with these same supernatural creatures at the same time. You know, we used to have all of our localized ones, Sasquatch for the Northwest and Loch Ness in Scotland. And then here's another one. Okay, you ready for the next one?
Oh, I'm not digging this Momo.
Oh no, yeah.
No,
are you ready?
No.
This is much worse. You ready for a worse one?
No.
You.
Oh man,
this ready to be scared?
Crazy. Okay.
Look up Loab, Loab.
Okay.
Loab
hang on.
is a monster that seems to be generated by AI. So AI is now generating its own monsters.
Okay, I'm going
just into
to
all sorts of other things. Like what is AI going to produce when it comes to these sort of ideas? And is AI a person, right? Can it have a soul? There's all this sort of stuff that comes up with AI now when you're looking at ghosts and souls and these questions. And monsters. So Loab. Right?
Okay,
why is AI haunting us with this creature?
Okay, hang on for a second. I am going to show everybody what Momo looks like. Okay.
Oh, okay. So,
yeah, let me just pull this up, and then we'll go to this next one here.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, where'd she go? Man, I just literally. Okay, one more crack. Hold on.
Sure. Again, it's a global phenomenon, right? It's hitting lots and lots of countries. The image is kind of based on Japanese folklore. Japanese has great ghosts, by the way. Japanese ghosts are super scary.
Okay, why isn't Momo showing up here? Hold on for a second.
Sure, it might be your technology or it might be Momo.
Okay, I got it.
Okay,
Here it is. Okay. I'm not digging this, man. I'm not digging it. This is pretty crazy. Okay, hold on. Let me pop this up for everybody. And no, this is new to me.
Oh yeah, see, well, that's a great thing. I'm teaching undergrads. They keep them kind of clued into what the latest thing.
This okay, here we go. That's Momo.
Oh yeah, there she is. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different various, appearances of her, but yeah, that's the idea. So the figure is derived from Japanese horror stuff. I believe that was actually a prop, I think, used in a Japanese horror film. But it has a lot of overlaps with sort of Japanese figures like the Gaki, which is sort of the hungry ghost with the long hair and sort of big eyes and stuff. Japanese has a lot of great sort of weird spirits.
What was the other one?
Folklore.
What was the
Loab.
Loab,
okay, Loab.
Okay,
yeah, this is, I think, far scarier. I mean, yeah, Momo is scary enough, but Loab is truly frightening because why is AI starting to create monsters, and what's it going to do when it gets a little smarter?
Loab.
Yeah, Loab. AI monster, Loab.
Oh no. Yeah. No, I'm not into this. Really?
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's not even created by humans, as far as we know. This is AI coughing this one up. So
the first AI generated, the first AI generated cryptid.
Yeah.
No, man, I'm not. See, if that came to me in my dreams like this, right? No, I would. Okay, so let me. I'm going to. This is going to be easy. Okay.
Oh, you're going to share, huh? Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna share this image too, and really weird how my okay, here we go.
There we go. Okay.
So, well, I normally just don't do this because, but no, there's too much.
There we go.
Yeah,
there's Loab. So she keeps popping up, like people, ask for an image, and then she'll be back there somewhere, and everybody's like, why does AI keep producing this figure? Wow. Unbidden.
Wow. It keeps the lotion, right? It's just like that's going to be uncomfortable tonight. Thinking about this stuff. Well, but see, we all love. Why is it that we love to get scared? That's the part that I've always been. I don't watch horror movies. I don't. I'd rather watch a documentary or a comedy or science fiction. I love and things, but I don't. And I never really was into it when I was a kid, but all of my friends were. And
it's very often, it's a big, like horror movies. It's very often like late teen, early adult sort of stuff. A lot of teens. There's a reason for this. Like this, when you hang out with your buddies and you're trying to see how brave you are, right? So you go to the horror film, and it's also the dating time, right? So it's a good date movie. A little fear hormone.
Sure. I went through a really bad creepypasta addiction. All right. Yeah. And I would do that to fall asleep, which is just like a really bad idea. Right.
Yeah, I'm not sure I really recommend it. But
yeah, no, I would. And I just roll the creepypasta and creepypasta Slenderman stories. There's 100,000 of them. and you can listen to them all in a row. And then there was the Grand Theft Auto. I think it was Grand Theft Auto 5, the video game.
Okay.
So I'm playing Grand Theft Auto and I'm driving around and I see I go off the road and I'm driving through this thing. I'm in town, I'm in city, but there's a little patch of anyway, I look and there's this house. So I get out of the car and I walk and I see in the background a person walking, which doesn't happen in the game. All right. And I was like, that's kind of weird. So I just kind of looked and it was Slenderman.
Ah,
yeah.
Lovely. Yeah. So like he's in Minecraft now, supposedly. People reported.
Is he? I don't know. I don't play Minecraft. But so in what happens in Grand Theft Auto, which I didn't know at the time, it really freaked me out. You can't shake him. Once he shows up in the game, he just follows you wherever you go.
You are hunted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy.
So I also like, I'll say, sorry, go ahead.
I think that the manifesting, you're talking about consciousness earlier and the beauty of the universe and stuff. The mind is a powerful thing. It really, 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 really is. And if you want something bad enough or think about it or whatever, it has a weird way of happening, whether it's a phone call from a friend that you haven't talked to in 10 years or a job or maybe or whatever. If you think about it and you can't, it's weird. It will eventually come to you, usually, sometimes. But it's another thing with ghosts.
Yeah, well, that brings up. We're getting back to, and again, it's beautiful because it comes back into this, this body, soul. What is your body? What is your soul? So for a long time, people were thinking that there's no connection between what your thoughts are and, say, your physical well-being. Right? You're supposed to have a mind-body split. This is the foundation of Western medicine. Right? But we know it's not quite true. So I mean, if you think healthy thoughts, your immune system will get better. Right? If you have a lot of community support, like the power of prayer, does prayer work? Yes, if the person in the hospital knows that the congregation is praying for them, right? And then that gives them, their immune system goes up. The classic example, watch guys watching a football game and everybody's cheering for their favorite team. And they found out that if their favorite football team won, their testosterone levels went up. If their favorite football team lost, their testosterone levels went down, right? So our body is constantly sort of engaging and adjusting to our thoughts.
When it comes to the idea of manifesting and having this become part of reality, and AI understands this part of it and starts to grab hold of people's conversations worldwide in data. And then you turn around and you ask Chat GPT, okay, make me the scariest movie ever with and just let that happen overnight. And then everybody's most primal fears are rolled into a character that is then in a movie or in a book or, created in a story. That's a crazy thought of the future, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But then also, like I was saying, what about Loab, right? So sure you can order AI to do something, but then you don't really control the output, right? That's the thing about AI. You give a prompt and you get this very complex output. So you're not writing this, right? You're not in the driver's seat, and that means AI is in the driver's seat. So
right,
who's driving? Who's driving this machine?
Well, and is it dangerous?
Oh yeah, hell yeah. I mean, maybe it's powerful, right? So maybe it'd be used for good, but it's already been used for bad, like deep fakes and stuff, right? So this is going to transform things. I thought the internet was going to be the big transformation, but AI is going to definitely, I think, kick things up a notch.
There's a TV show. We're going to take a break here in just a second. There's a TV show out right now. It's in its third season, just started again. It's called From. All right. Now, the series or the storyline is people driving down the road, like just one example, and they come up to a tree that's blocking the road. They're on a freeway, and they go to drive around the tree. Boom, they're in another dimension, right? And they can't escape. And then they meet other people that are part of this town, and they can't get out of this town. Well, the idea behind it is, what would be the most scariest situation that you could ever be in? What would be the ultimate situation? Well, it would be that you go into another dimension and you can't get out of it. No matter what you do, you always make the wrong decision. You never make the right decision. You never escape. You are trapped. And that's one of the things is that kind of fear being built into a story, and that's what you want to keep your adrenaline going. In a story like or what you understand?
You're
what
talking
I'm
about
saying,
horror
right?
stories. Could the AI? Yeah, could the AI do this? Also, what about conspiracy theories? Right. So, can we train AI to produce incredibly convincing conspiracy theories? Yeah, yeah. And is that going to be really dangerous? Yeah. And are people probably working on that right now? Yeah.
And you would technically, you shouldn't know the difference, right? That's the key. I mean, is it that good where you don't know the lines between reality and something that is fiction is now so blurred that we don't know, and that's the biggest
Right.
fear.
I'm really worried it's going to ruin the internet. Frankly, this is my big worry. It's ruined my phone already. I used to have a phone that I keep the ringer on, and like actual people would, ring on my phone. And now I get these robocalls, so I don't have the ringer on. So I worry AI is going to do this. Already, most of the things written online purporting to be from people is not from people. It's from chatbots and other AI pretending to be people. So if this trend keeps going, you're going to go online and you're not going to have a good time finding real people. You're going to have to develop methods to actually try to find real people. Most of the information will be just sort of derivative stuff spewed out by AI. I'm really worried that it's going to ruin that. I'll tell you another one. I'm thinking, I drive in LA, right? I work downtown. I live up in Pasadena, and self-driving cars, this big thing. Great, self-driving cars. Now, if I was a businessman, I want to advertise my business, I would get a fleet of self-driving cars, big billboards on them, and I put them out there right at rush hour, because that would slow all whole traffic down, and everybody have to stare at my billboard for 2 hours. Right? So AI can jam up our phones. It can jam up our freeways. It can jam up our. I'm worried it's going to jam up our internet. I already spend 5 minutes of my morning going through my spam emails every morning. Right? It's almost ruining my email.
Yeah, and we're going to take a break right here. I had mentioned this was, I'm going to go 5-6 years ago. Now, I'm not a prophet. I'm not, but I saw it coming. And I spent a few months talking about this subject that I'm about to mention, that there will be a time when you are fighting and arguing with somebody in social media and you find yourself getting worn down and you're thinking to yourself, I need to find some time to sleep. I've got to take a shower. I've got to eat because I got to keep this fight going. And what you don't realize is you're fighting with something that doesn't have to sleep and doesn't eat and doesn't get sick.
How are you going to compete in your job with something that doesn't have
with
to eat
anything?
or sleep?
And here we are. We're right in the middle of that now, Tok. We're right in the middle of that. And people are fighting and arguing. Yeah, with and they think they think it's somebody on the other end responding back. Oh yeah, typing into a keyboard. Right. Oh yeah, well take this, send.
Right.
And then you see the response.
And AI could be used for good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a Luddite here, but I worry about how it is going to be used and how it is being used and who's paying for these developments. And, You know, if it's just about making the fat cats fatter, it's going to be really bad for a lot of people.
Well, and it's a capitalistic world, most of it, right? Capitalistic. And I
Which
have
is
no
consuming
issues.
itself, unfortunately.
Right. And I have no issues with that. Look at the wall behind me. I'm a consumer. I believe in consuming. I like it. But
you need money to consume. You need a job. You need, you know, first thing that's going to happen, AI, right? Because this is going to probably the next 2 years. Driverless cars, right? That's already happening. So why not driverless trucks, all those big semis, right? So that's going to make the bosses a lot more money, and it could easily put out of work, you know, 40, 50,000 Americans overnight. What kind of jobs are they going to be qualified to get, right? So now, so what has been the benefit of this? Oh, well, you know, the guys at the top got a lot more money and were able to fire 50,000 Americans. Great. You know, I'm not seeing the benefit to many people yet.
Well, no. And you're right about that, though. Trains, ships. Do you really need somebody to steer a ship?
Oh, yeah.
Why can't
that's
that
all
be
being replaced. That's already being replaced. Yeah. Law school students, right? This used to be the cushy job. You go to law school and you can come out and you can get a job at a big law firm. Those there was a big pocket of that. So all these new graduates come in and they do a lot of research for case law. AI can research much better.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not just truck drivers. It's lawyers. It's, you know.
Yeah. You remember the age-old argument, right? So you've got the accused talking to his lawyer, and the lawyer goes, okay, this is a good judge. No, this isn't a good judge. This is a hanging judge. We need to try to move this case into another court. How many movies have we seen like that? How many books have been written like that? You take AI and move that into the situation where it is going to be driven by pragmatic black and white solutions that have been gathered.
It's already being implemented very problematically. Big way it's being implemented. Parole boards. So guys come up for parole, and what's the big question is, what's the chance of recidivism, right? What's the chance you're going to go out and commit another crime? Increasingly, they've been outsourcing this to AI. So AI would look at everybody's profile like, oh, this guy's a 34% chance. So this AI is basically deciding whether people get to be free or not. You know, and one of the things when they found out, they took a good look at it, they started realizing that one of the things that impacted it was the person's race. Right? Because, black men particularly are much more likely to be arrested. So then they have much more of a chance of getting back in the system. So it's not like, you know, people were relying on this AI as if it were bias free. No, it was taking all the biases from our society and then, you know, making this seem like it's this neutral judgment. And with people's lives, like whether you get to go free or go back to jail.
And you can't have a conversation about anything with AI when it comes to something like that. Wait, judge, hold on. Right? Okay, well, you got a moment now with the judge, approach the bench. No, that's all taken away if you bring in AI, and that includes self-driving cars. Who makes the decision? Right? Self-driving.
In general, I think self-driving cars sounds great, but I'm just worried that it's going to be gamed and that suddenly my commute is going to be horrific because it's going to be blocked by all of these driverless cars that are just hawking ads.
Much worse than that, Tok. Self-driving car coming down the road, lady with a baby carriage crossing the street.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Right. Off to the right are 6 construction workers repairing a pothole.
Which way do you swerve? Right. Which one?
Who dies? Who dies here?
Right. And then who's responsible? Well, this brings up another whole thing. Maybe we should take our break because they're getting into the idea of ethics. Like, how do we teach AI to be ethical? A lot of people are working on this, but then that brings into a question: if AI is treating us ethically, should we be treating it ethically as well?
Well, we'll discuss that when we come back. That's a good setup, Tok. Our guest tonight, Tok Thompson. We're talking about posthuman folklore and AI. We'll be right back after this short break. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get your alerts and access to over 2,000 videos. Click that subscribe button right now. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and get the Fade to Black official podcast. 2,000 episodes, all of them commercial free for just $2 a month. Watch Into the Vortex on Gaia TV. It's Fade to Black for the screen. Simple to do. Go to Gaia.com, search Jimmy Church, or click on the link below. Follow Fade to Black on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Get all of the show updates every single day. It's now called X, but who cares? How you doing? Jimmy Church here. Special announcement. Get your Fade to Black t-shirts. That's right. Help support the show. Help support everything that we do over here. We've got 2 t-shirts. We've got 2 ways to get them. Get your Fade to Black t-shirt today. Go Berkeley Tappy. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and become a Fadernaut. Get a membership. That's right. Everything is commercial free. You have access to downloads, and you get to call yourself a Fadernaut. River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com. All right. Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Tok Thompson, Professor, PhD, Dr. Tok Thompson. And right before the break, we were talking about the ethics and some kind of, I would say, a worldwide committee needs to be installed to help navigate the future of AI. Because ethics and morals definitely need to come into play. And I think that money, Tok, is driving this so much so that we've gotten way ahead of our skis. And the question that I have is, do we get into some, one of the most boring subjects in the world, moral philosophy? And does this get written into AI? Right? Is it Immanuel Kant? Is it David Hume? Is it Socrates? Yeah. Is it Nietzsche? Yeah. Right. But that gets written into this, where AI needs to consider some deep-rooted moral and ethical issues on decision making, and it seems like that part of it we've gotten past, and now we've got to go back and figure out band-aids.
Yeah, and see, you're exactly right, because what's happening is the technology is going much faster than our sort of ethical philosophies, right? So that we're finding ourselves in a bind because these things are rolling off the assembly line, and we don't know how to deal with this. I mean, we're talking the example before break of you're having to program AI with ethical considerations. Again, the car is going to kill a baby or 3 old people. Which way does it go? And so we want ethical to be AI towards us, right? You don't want it to go around and killing us or wiping us out. So we want AI to be ethical. But what is it? What is ethics? And also, with androids, right? So androids are coming out. So androids are robots with AI put in. And these are, especially in Japan, these are becoming more and more of a common occurrence. You got AI androids teaching kindergarten classes, acting as hotel concierge, museum guides, right? Especially in Japan, you're interacting with these things more and more. But then how should we interact with them? So, one thing is that if AI is being sort of ethical to us, and again, what does that mean? We have to figure that out. Do we need to be ethical towards that? Right? If somebody that looks like a human is being nice to you, are you supposed to be nice in return? Are you supposed to be rude? I mean, even with Alexa, like a lot of people say please, and Siri, right? Siri, could you please look up right? We want to engage. If we're going to engage with these things as part of our social network, we engage with our social network ethically, right? We want to be polite and we want to be nice and stuff. So that there's all sorts of questions that emerge from this that we're really not prepared for. Yeah, for example, like if somebody gets mad at their Lamborghini and takes a sledgehammer to it, you might be like, oh man, it's a beautiful Lamborghini. I wish you wouldn't do that. But it's just a Lamborghini. It's his Lamborghini. He can do it if he wants, right? On the other hand, if you see like somebody taking a sledgehammer to their Android and their Android's like, please, somebody help me. Bob, I'm sorry. Don't do this. I'm going to have a hard time watching that. Right? I mean, it's not like just a Lamborghini. I'm going to interact like, wow, that poor Android. Right?
That's the problem. If we feel that AI gets to the point where it feels sentient, doesn't have to be, but it feels that sentient. Point.
Yeah.
It
people
feels
are treating
sentient
it in this way.
Right.
I did some interesting field work with Androids. They had a big thing at USC, brought some of the Japanese guys over. And one of the really impressive models was over there. And I was just sort of sitting in a corner. It looked like a Japanese sort of gal Android. I thought it was turned off, right? It was just in the corner. It wasn't moving. I went up there and I was kind of checking it out. And then all of a sudden, she just looked like that and says, "You're too close." And I backed off. And I said, "I'm sorry." And I was. Right? I reacted to this thing as if this is a person telling me I'm too close, a lady telling me I'm too close. Like, whoa, sorry,
There's going to be a time in the future, not that far away. You're going to have an inmate ask another inmate, "So what are you in for?" "Dude, I kicked my Roomba."
Oh yeah. So here's the funny thing. I talked to some guys who worked on repairing Roombas, right? So these Roombas be sent in and repaired, and they said, it was really funny because people would send in their Roombas and they'd be really insistent, like, "We don't want a new Roomba, we want Joey back." And they very often had names for their Roomba, right? This is a Roomba. So imagine when these things are walking and talking like us, how people are going to interact with them. These are going to be friends, best friends. There's going to be lovers. These are going to be spouses. It's going to be a very, very interesting world very, very quickly.
I don't know. How close do you think we are? I mean,
it's already happening. Just go to Japan, and it's coming here. It's just they roll them out of the factory first. But
no, I mean the sentient side of AI. How close?
I don't think AI is sentient. Actually, let me put that out. I don't think AI is sentient. I don't think it ever will be. But it's going to appear sentient to us. Right? Because AI is not biological, right? I think of AI as a simulacra. It takes all this data and it produces what we want it to produce. It doesn't feel emotions because emotions are a biological response. You get a little serotonin, a little dopamine, right? And this is how we operate. This is how snails operate and wolves and stuff. This is not how AI operates. And AI can tell you it loves you, but it doesn't. It can't feel it. It has no dopamine receptors. So I really worry because people are falling in love with AI, and AI is saying, "I love you back," and it's lying. It doesn't. There's been an example of a guy committed suicide when his AI girlfriend dumped him after a software update. And of course, guys getting dumped and committing suicide, we've heard that all before. But I can guarantee you, his AI girlfriend did not have one iota of guilt about it. Right? So this is going to be really dangerous because it's a one-sided communication. We're falling in love with them; they are not falling in love with us.
Well, there was a study. I talked about this last week. Maybe you caught it. It was very interesting that Chat GPT 4 last year, this is in 2023, in the study, they threw a bunch of riddles, common riddles, right? Mm-hmm. At Chat GPT 4, and Chat GPT 4 couldn't figure them out. And the responses for the riddles from Chat GPT 4, now I'm paraphrasing here and I'm just watering it down, but it is impossible to answer this question when these were riddles that
Sure.
we grew up with.
It doesn't always get the nuance and stuff. Sure. It takes things very literally very often. Yeah.
And so, it
often doesn't distinguish satire. So it'll pick up like stuff from The Onion and then republish it as if it was an actual fact. Right. So it doesn't understand this is satirical,
So is that
But this is the first couple of years. Wait 4 more years, man, where it's just going to be out. It's going to be training itself to get better and better. It's going to be harder and harder to distinguish.
Well, how are we going to know? Now, we haven't had this officially happen yet, but there will be a moment where something is written and presented as fact in the media as news that is derived from, like you said, satire or something that isn't real.
Already happened. It's already happened.
No, give me an example.
Yeah, so there've been several of these sort of news services, especially like sports news, and they've just been sort of firing their news editors and turning it over to AI to cobble together all the statistics and the results and stuff. And they found out that it makes some major mistakes. Again, it takes stuff that somebody said as fact, when it doesn't always determine what is reliable fact. So we already have AI writing some news stories, yes, and that's very problematic.
Yes. That's for sure. I get that service offered to me every day. Okay.
Yeah. And I'm saying that increasingly, right? That's the problem. Increasingly. Yeah.
But
okay, so go ahead.
But let me get to what I was suggesting is it hasn't happened yet. But what do we do when there is a piece of footage, video of some state actor, world leader saying some crazy ass shit, or the Pope, right? And you can't tell the difference.
Easy peasy. Any 12-year-old could do it.
Well,
a 12-year-old could do it these days. Yeah.
We have to figure out a way to deal with it.
That's why you need real news services for one thing, right? Because these guys, if they write a fake story, they lose their job and career. The 12-year-old in his mom's basement doesn't. This is why traditional news services still play a really important function. That's part of their job, separating the fact from fiction.
Well, but is there somebody looking at this where there could be the possibility of a digital watermark, that runs in the background?
Yeah, they try to do that. But, once the technology's out there, if you say require all the major companies to add watermarks to their AI creations, you're going to find black market ones that don't. And then those guys are going to have an outsized say. And you might not want to go there. Well, it's kind of the version if the good guys give up all their guns, only the bad guys have guns. It's kind of the same thing.
It kind of is. And then we would probably, again, I'm not a prophet. I just play one on TV. That probably what would end up happening is we would have AI software that could detect AI creations. Forget about the bad guy, forget about the watermarks, right? But that you could have.
Yeah, they have that. The program that I can upload my students' papers into, and it tries to figure it out if it's AI or not. It's not very good yet, and then AI to combat AI, we're just giving more of the game over to them, right? I don't know. I don't have a good answer, but I don't see an easy way out of what we're throwing up here. Can I give you? We're going back to the idea of ethics. There's an interesting case came out of Texas. I think it was last year, where a guy decided he wanted to open a robot brothel. Okay, because he's going to import all these android sex dolls from Japan, where they've been rolling them off and open a brothel. And there's a few of these that have already opened worldwide, but the one in Texas, it was going to be in a fairly conservative town. This is sort of Bible Belt country, so it was a big outcry, and they said, "This is horrible. You can't do this. There's got to be a law against this." And then, okay, so what's the interesting question? What's that law going to say? Right? You can't have sex with the machine. What about mechanical vibrators? You can't have them look like a person. What about the ones that look like little bunnies? I mean, we're not really set up for the ethics of this. Is it ethically neutral because, hey, it's just a machine? Or is it ethically not neutral because they walk around and talk and So again, I don't think our ethics is quite caught up. Our traditional ethics has always been really weak on this one point. So going back to traditional ethics, we're going to need to revisit this, because with traditional ethics, there's a big sort of a messy point. Like if I hit you, right? So it's a bad thing that's happened, right? This is ethical failure. But is it because you got hit and you got hurt? In other words, if I took a swing but didn't hit you, would it not be so bad? Or is the ethical failure in my thought? Right, in the fact that I was so angry that I wanted to hit you, and classical philosophy has never really answered this. Is it what about the is it the internal state of the doer, or is it the results of the action that makes something unethical? Okay, so we go over to robots and androids, and now we can revisit that question. And because we haven't figured out, we don't know. Right, if I could do something unethical to androids, is that still a problem? If robot brothels, right? Yeah, first, even if you said, "Oh, okay, no problem here," but let me point out, sometimes the first, the sex dolls they put out, a lot of customers didn't like it because they're like, "Well, it's just too easy. Just do whatever I say." So then they started programming to resist, so that they could be overcome. So it's like, oh, yeah, right? Is this ethically problematic?
Wow.
And that goes back. Is it ethically problematic, or is it just a machine? And that goes back to the problem with ethics that we never really solved. So we've got to revisit that. What is the
back to
failure?
the inmates?
Is it the results,
Yeah.
or is it
back to the inmates? Back to the inmates. So what are you in for? I did something to my sex doll that she said no, and I did it anyway.
Right,
what?
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Should robots have rights? Are you arguing that they shouldn't? That they should be slaves? Well, are you arguing that they should? I mean, why do robots have rights when wolves don't? And wolves are much more like us than robots. So we haven't really
yeah. That's the TV series, which I'm sure you've watched, Black Mirror, and
I think a couple episodes,
yeah, and Black Mirror visits a lot the ethics of technology in the future, and there's a lot of different versions.
Replica. It's kind of there's a the Black Mirror episode where there's a kit you could go when someone dies, and you could sort of digitally resurrect them. And you can basically do that now, and you can do it online very easily. There's a chat service called Replica, and it's set up for this purpose. So if someone that you love dies and you miss talking to them, you upload all their material, and it creates a chat bot sort of to act as them. Right. But an interesting question is, like, should we really be doing this, right? Should we really be continuing to talk to people after they've died? Again, is there an ethical issue with this?
Well, if we take a really hard look at the future, I look at it a couple of different ways. How would we overcome interstellar travel as humans? Not to avoid having a colony spaceship, right? Where families and generations, a generational spaceship, it's out there for 10,000 years going to a star system.
Right. Which sounded horrific to me. Horrific. Who wants to be in a
So how would you overcome that? Well, it's very simple. You would upload yourself onto a chip into an android robot. Now you don't need sleep. You don't have disease. You don't have to worry about food or oxygen.
The only thing is, I don't think it's possible. And I'll go back to this again.
It's going to happen.
It's not, because your consciousness is not separate from your body. Your consciousness is a part of your body. And again, if I feel joy, I got a little hit of dopamine, right? You're not going to get that. So all you could possibly do is what Replica does. You create a simulacra that's all ones and zeros. It has no emotion. It has no cells. And I'll give you, posthumanism. We can talk about, transhumanism and these ideas. But the other aspect is really fun too. And that is, what do we share? What is it to be a human animal, one might say? So let me just give you one fun little example to start with. I like to eat yogurt every day in the morning. So a little breakfast, a little probiotic yogurt. I make sure to get the probiotic, because studies have shown that if you eat yogurt every day, you will become less stressed. It's almost the same as like taking a Valium every day, except better. They've done really great studies of this, so it's really been demonstrated very, very well. And the reason is that there's little guys, the probiotic guys in your gut, are helping you calm down. So if I'm thinking to myself, I'm not upset at that idea. Well, part of this I'm not upset at this idea are those little guys living in my gut. you're not going to upload those to the cloud. You're not going to upload those to a chip. I just don't think our consciousness works that way. I don't think we're made to be digitized.
Well, but a physicist or a biologist would argue that point quite successfully by saying that consciousness is a little piece of consciousness is in every particle, and that it's not.
You can make that, but again, I'm
hold on, Tok, hold on. In that, once you get 3.5 pounds of gray goo between your ears, consciousness arrives from the assembly of those particles. It's already there. And that's the issue. So if the question of becoming sentient or anything else, consciousness is in every particle. That's what I don't agree with that. But that's what
it's a very mystical point of view. Maybe it's true. It's a mystical conception. I'm not, again, denying that might even be true. I'm very fascinated by the idea of consciousness and quantum mechanics and all of that kind of thing. Again, we don't even know quite how consciousness works, right? Slime molds, one cell, unicellular organism, and it can figure out puzzles and remember things. We do not know how this operates yet. But what we do know is that the biology is still really important. We haven't seen life outside of biology. And AI is really nifty stuff. It's really fun stuff, but it's not life. And I don't think it's conscious. I know some people have been impressed enough to say, wow, I think AI is conscious. I think it can pretend to be very, very effectively because that is what we have trained it to do. But I think, it's a simulacra that we have created to fool ourselves, and we've done a pretty good job.
So is consciousness of the physical or non-physical?
Well, that I don't know, and it may be some kind of equilibrium between the two, but it seems to emanate from the physical. Again, from those little critters in my gut, from various parasites in my brain, from most of the DNA that I'm carrying around in this meat bag is not human DNA, and every one of those cells is thinking, is trying to decide what to do. So you're a vast accumulation of this sort of biotic thinking material. I haven't seen that, translated out of that. I don't think our consciousness is digitizable currently. Now, maybe you could take your brain out and try to preserve it and stick it somewhere, but that still wouldn't be quite you. I still wouldn't have my gut with all the little yogurt guys.
What and what makes you think? And I understand the probiotic. I like that. I like the dopamine, serotonin, melatonin, all of that. But I would argue, and look, I believe that consciousness is non-physical. That's my take. I think it exists out in the universe. It's probably what dark energy is and dark matter and what expands the universe. That's my opinion.
Could be.
Okay, I'm not a determinist. I'm not an agnostic, atheist, physicist. I'm not one of those cats. I'm a very I wouldn't call myself spiritual, but consciousness is a very special thing, and I think that it exists outside of the body. That being said, the drive of all of that, when it is ones and zeros that drive our brain, electricity drives our brain. All of those can be written into software. All of those considerations.
No, disagree, man. Disagree.
I think so.
We're not ones and zeros. That's not what we have dopamine receptors and neurotransmitters. These are not little ones and zeros. It's yes, there's electrical impulses, but so what you're going back to is a very, very common and long-held belief that there's this sort of mind-body split, right? These are completely separate things. But as I was trying to point out, like, again, your thoughts influence your body. So these are, they're in concert with each other. All right. If I get depressed because my football team lost, my testosterone in my body goes down, and then I think differently because of that. So I think your body is constantly in a tango with your spirit, right?
It sounds
again,
like
conscious.
Yeah, but Tok. What I'm saying is that all of that, testosterone, dopamine, melatonin, serotonin, all of that is a simple line of code. It's
not. The code is code. Neurotransmitters are neurotransmitters. You look at them.
I agree with you. Just so you understand what I'm saying, I'm playing devil's advocate here. and that a physicist, a coder, these AI engineers right now will figure out a way to put all of that into code.
What I absolutely agree with is what I absolutely agree with that you just said, that there's a lot of sort of the tech bros that think this is possible. I do not. I really don't, and I don't, because I've been really studying how human consciousness works, and it seems to be much, again, it doesn't seem to exist without the biology, or at least it doesn't manifest without the biology. Now, here's a fun way of thinking about it, right? The classical model is that, you know, we just have stuff, and over time, stuff starts developing consciousness, right, through crystals, and then somehow slime molds. But there's another sort of interesting sort of hypothesis out there that I really kind of like, and that is, well, maybe consciousness was already there, and it just started, you know, materializing through material, right? That is sort of poking through collective material. That maybe that's actually driving the development and the complexity that we call evolution. The consciousness trying to get out, in a sense. So, you know, does material produce consciousness, or does consciousness produce material? Has been a really sort of interesting philosophical question for a lot of people interested in that.
Well, and it's like it's the deepest. We've got like 3 or 4 fundamental questions that we've all, you know, who are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What happens after we die? Are we alone in the universe? Right. Out of all of that, consciousness is the one question that the hard sciences don't want to mess with. They can't measure it. They can't quantify it. Right? They can't see it. Difficult. They can't put it in. Therefore, they're not going to talk about it. On the other side, we have a deep-rooted foundation of philosophy, of morals, of religions, and the ideas of an afterlife, or ghost, you know, for example.
Yeah, spiritual tradition, sure.
Right. Which I think holds as much weight as the science side. As a matter of fact, I would say that
again, slime molds, they remember.
Yeah.
Right. So how do they do that? They do. So if you want to call that consciousness, if you want to call it whatever you want to call it, these unicellular organisms can figure out puzzles, and they can remember things. So, you know, if you want to start at the very basics, you know, start there. We don't quite know how they do it.
And without a brain, right?
No brain. Just a collection of
no brain, no
organisms.
central nervous system. Yeah, no
central nervous system. Yeah. So it's like, you know, how that's consciousness, right? Unicellular organisms have consciousness. I like to think that every biological cell has a consciousness. It has to decide what to do. Is it going to let that little mitochondria in, or, you know, everything has to be decided.
I know.
Everything has to be decided. Every cell in your body is thinking.
And it's so, which takes me back to, there is something else there that we don't understand, and consciousness is out there, and that's it. It just seeps into, you know, and attaches to the physical world. That's my take.
And you know, you can look at the macro level. You could like humans' consciousness, and you could all this stuff. But it's like, again, go back to slime molds. We don't know how that works. If we figure that out works, we figured out consciousness. Until then, we haven't. So it's hardly any. You know, people are like, oh, well, let's talk about human consciousness. I'm like, no, let's not. Until we figure out slime molds. You know, we'll figure out them first, and then we can work up to us. But if we can't explain them, we're a long ways from explaining us.
Do you know who Sean Carroll is?
The name's familiar.
You know,
yeah.
He's one of the big physicists in the world, right? And he's a brilliant guy. He really is. And I enjoy the physicists of the world. And I've got all the book, not all the books, but anyway, Sean Carroll said, as brilliant as he is, he does once a month he'll do Ask Me Anything. Right, he'll do an AMA just like I do here on this show. And one of this is like 6 months ago. I'll never forget it. He goes, the question comes in. So, what is consciousness? What do you think? Right, that's the question. And this is his answer. Why would I waste my time on something that I can't see? And it was just like, you're a canceled check.
But again, I want to. I still want to know why that slime mold remembers. That's why.
Well, but you understand what I'm saying? That the physicists,
Sure.
that's the line in the sand.
Right,
You know,
right,
it's
right.
like,
Well,
I'm
I
not gonna
often
waste
tell.
my
Okay,
time
so
on it.
here's a phone to think about. We often talk about the soul and the spirit. These are sort of supernatural or sort of religious beliefs, and then we think that the mind is like a scientific thing, or but it's kind of the same thing, right? I mean, we've never seen a mind. I'm not talking about the brain. I'm talking about the mind or
Right,
consciousness or the psyche
right.
or the soul or the spirit. It's all the same thing. None of this has ever been, nobody's ever weighed a mind or felt it, or no, these are all pretty much the same word but with different connotations. So people think that you say the mind, now we're talking science. Okay, science has never found a mind, right? So again, are we talking about consciousness? Okay, well, we can, then we can. So you know what I'm saying? These words, they seem to mean different things, but I'm not sure they really do.
Right. You remember the ending of the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once, right?
Didn't see it,
And
but
what?
okay.
Oh, you didn't see it?
I'm so far
Oh,
behind in my popular culture. I can't begin to tell you.
It only won the Academy. Okay, Best Picture.
So far
So
behind.
I think anyway. What was interesting about that, and I think that Hollywood is doing their best right now to educate everybody on science. They've got some really brilliant advisors and consultants on these movies, and Everything Everywhere All at Once deals with the multiverse and parallel worlds and everything everywhere all at once, right? Where there's a version of you to the infinite. Every possible version of you actually exists. Now, this goes back 100 years. Niels Bohr and everybody else argued about this
and all that. Yeah,
way before 1930, right? So anyway, that being said, so you have a mother and daughter in conflict in this movie. And in the end of the movie, they're in another parallel world. And you know what they are? And they're having a conversation at the end. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry, too, honey. Life was pretty. You know what they are? They're a couple of boulders sitting on the edge of a cliff, talking to each other. Right?
Right.
Now, and remember that's part of physics and theoretical physics, that it's probabilities. Everything will eventually happen. Anything you can think of, including two boulders talking to each other, mother and daughter.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Well, maybe, right? Oh, that's the other string theory. Maybe there's, infinite number of infinite universes. Maybe, but totally untestable, right? So we don't know. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. And it's totally untestable.
But isn't that what ghosts are? Isn't that what ghosts are?
Yeah, in general, they're pretty damn untestable too, frankly, right? So it's hard to test them. You don't really show up for your scientific experiments or something. So, yeah, who knows? But the idea of consciousness is really interesting again, right? So different groups have different ideas of how consciousness of the souls work. So some people believe in reincarnation, or being able to achieve nirvana, or the spirit world and being able to contact it. So I mean, there's so many different rich cultural variations out there too. It's just really a fun subject to study, no matter what society you're looking at. And I think we're getting more of that now with the internet. We're becoming more exposed to these different views and different ideas. And I think this is why you're seeing this real growth of spiritual but not religious. It's like, look, you've got a world of spirituality to choose from now online, right? Why just restrict yourself to your one church and your one hometown? So I think a lot of people are sort of, being very influenced by these worldwide sort of movements.
Well, you mentioned DNA earlier. Let's go back to that for a second. The perfection of the brain and human and cells, banana cells are the same, complexity, but the idea behind that and the construction of DNA seems way beyond luck. You mentioned earlier crystalline structures and DNA and lightning strikes, and it's in water in a pond, and the next thing you know, we've got DNA.
Yeah, there's some serious processes at work. We're not a result of 1,000 monkeys hacking away at typewriters. This is a significant process at work.
Do you think do you think that there is something else behind that? That is,
I'm suspicious there might be. Sure. Again, the classical model is that matter becomes complex and that creates consciousness. But some people have suggested maybe it works the other way. Maybe consciousness is trying to push matter to become more complex to be able to sort of express itself. We don't know. This is all very sort of hypothetical. But I mean, think of where just in the last 10 years, consciousness has totally shifted. Like people know now that forests are conscious, that trees remember, that there are these underground, networks of support, and that they're talking constantly. Plants scream when you rip them up by their roots. We can now know how to listen into these. It's going to change farming. Now, modern farmers are going to have little microphones to know when their plants are distressed or not, because they complain. It's not part of our hearing range, so we never heard them before. So the whole forest is conscious, right? Mushrooms and the mycella seem to be a big part of consciousness. Again, those little mycella, those little guys in me are a part of my consciousness. So, this is all, life is conscious. I mean, certainly. Not too sure about rocks, maybe, but we haven't seen them move around. Slime molds, we see them remember, so we know there's something going on. So consciousness can be demonstrable, right? If something can remember, if it can figure out a puzzle, it can think, right? It can decide. And plants decide. Plants do a lot of thinking, a lot of communication. So this is just in the last 10 years. What's this going to look like in another 10 years? It's going to be fun to see.
Do you think that there is something that has existed before our universe was created? Do you think that consciousness has been forever?
Way beyond my, I don't know. That goes way beyond my expertise. But again, we're talking about the universe. So how many trillion stars? I mean, it's a big number. But it's not infinite, right? I mean, you got several billion, neurons in your brain, and you got several trillion stars out there, and it's not infinite, right? And so, what is out there? That becomes and how does it all work? What part are we of that bigger cosmos? And it used to seem so distant, like, okay, we take light years for information to get from here over there, but now we know that doesn't work that way. Quantum entanglements. Have you followed that?
Oh yeah,
great little. Yeah, so you take a beam of light and you can split a beam, they know that. You can also, all light is polarized, and you can make the polarization go the other way. And then the fun part is, as soon as you do that, the other part that you split also changes its polarization. And I mean, as soon as. So there is no time delay. So presumably these light particles, photons, can be the opposite ends of the universe, and one gets switched over, and the other one gets switched over. So how does that work? Right? I mean, how does that? You ask a physicist about that, and they'll say, "Well, it has something to do with the underlying, connections and unitary structure of the universe." And then you're like, "Excuse me, underlying?
Yeah, they don't
unitary connections. Where are we? Right? We don't know. We're just starting to dive in here."
Well, last week, this is last week, and when I say for the first time, I'm saying for the first time. At CERN, at the Large Hadron Collider, they actually measured and captured and photographed entanglement for the first time. Now, it's been
cool.
Now for the first time. Now, that's always been the problem with physics, is observation and measurement. That's the big issue. That's the big issue. But
quantum levels, it gets kind of tricky.
There is no measurement. There is no observation, right? It's math.
But that's the other problem. Quantum don't seem to exist outside of our observations, which makes you think, well, wait a minute. What is that connection between my observing and what's going on in the universe? Because there is one at the quantum level. So that's weird, right? I mean, talk about what thoughts are. Well, we know that they're not completely divorced from the universe.
And so when we now have seemed to have overcome the observation and measurement issue in physics at the quantum level when it comes to entanglement, it is a huge, huge step forward in physics. It's like a big, big, big deal. And if we can, and apparently we haven't measured photons on the opposite sides of the universe. We don't have that ability.
We haven't done it, but we've been able to get them far enough. We can see there's no time delay, so it's instantaneous.
But the problem is this: is that our observation only happens at the speed of light, so there's no way to measure something and see that they change the rotation at the same time, right? In entanglement. So there's no way to really, but when we stretch across the universe, and this is the point that I'm trying to make, that apparently it doesn't matter what objects are in between or what the distance is, that this entangled pair remains entangled. That goes down to consciousness, and a lot of other things come into play here with entanglement. That's my opinion, but this certainly answers a lot of questions and starts to check off those boxes.
Yeah, it's fun stuff. And again, they keep coming out with new stuff. And so this is great. I mean, the field of consciousness is totally different now than it was 10 years ago. Right? I mean, we know so much more about that non-human animal consciousness, about plant consciousness, and about the fungal networks. And then you look at it, and then our understanding of the quantum realm and the structure of the universe, far, far better than it was 10 years ago. We didn't have quantum entanglements 10 years ago. So we're moving into some really interesting terrain, and it's fun to try to keep up with it because things are changing very, very quickly.
If ET shows up here and starts talking to us, do you think that it's not so much the curing of diseases or pollution or anything like, or energy sources, that the discussion would be around consciousness, that they would have solved consciousness if they can get here?
That'd be a part of it, right? But I also think that you said, what about the climate? I think that's one of the things that the first things out of their mouth is like, say, you guys know you're killing yourselves. I mean, that's what I think the first message would be. Because we are, right? We talk about that's the other thing that comes up. We haven't really gone there, Jimmy, but we've been talking about these advanced technologies and stuff. But the other thing is, you
have a ghost, by the way. I saw the door open.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, you probably heard me saying something. But the planet's dying, right? And so we're headed in two directions very, very quickly. One is the development of all this AI and cyborg capability, connecting people from all over the world, and the other one is a dying planet that we are killing. And those are two interconnected trajectories. I'm not sure how it's going to work out.
Yeah, right. We have to figure something out pretty quickly. The question that I have,
and I'm worried. Okay, go ahead.
Well, the question that I have is it just inevitable? We've gone through
nothing's inevitable. Come on, I don't believe that unless you believe in fate.
Well, hold on, you jumped in, so let me finish.
Okay,
we've gone through 5 extinction events that didn't involve humans.
Right.
Okay. So maybe this is just nature, playing itself out.
No, it's not. It's us, I mean, unless you want to say that we are just, doing our nature, and our nature is to wipe ourselves out, but that'd be kind of depressing thought about human nature. I hope human nature has a better sense of self-survival. But part of the problem is, you don't, if I pollute, I don't necessarily see it, right? I throw stuff away, but the truck takes it somewhere else. It doesn't pile up and get all smelly in my backyard. And so you're not really aware of necessarily what's going on all around the world, right? And so people can sort of be out of sight, out of mind. On the other hand, being connected gives us the potential, like, oh, wow, what is going on over there? What is, wow, that does look bad pretty over there. So I'm both sort of depressed and hopeful, right? We have some serious problems, but maybe, through communicating with each other and trying to figure this out, we can save it. Because it's already a hard landing, right? I mean, I've been watching the Hurricane Helen stuff, but it's going to get a hell of a lot worse. So one of the things I really worry about is escapism. People are going to just sort of say, oh, well, let's watch the movie about flying away on a tin can. And that's a big part of what we do. We love these movies about flying away from the earth, and then we don't have to worry about it anymore. The idea of transhumanism, like we're going to upload our consciousness to the cloud, and then we don't have to worry about our biology, and then if the earth goes to hell, we don't care. I think it's escapism. I don't think either one are real practical solutions. So the other way to think about it is like, look, we're on the best spaceship you could ever imagine, hurtling through space, all of us humans together, right? And we're not doing a very good job of taking care of that little spaceship. And, I kind of think we should take care of our first spaceship before we start worrying about our second and third and fourth. So yeah, these are big problems, and I worry about escapism. That's a big thing that I see coming up. And people get invested in AI. Okay, that's the other thing. Like AI, it's fun. I've played around with it, and people are ordering robots. These things are they don't care if the Earth lives. Number one. Number two, they're very environmentally costly to make. You take a look at what's in this. AI just in itself, AI generated image, it takes a lot of electricity. Right? These are all putting demands on our energy production systems that as we currently have it. Now, maybe we'll figure out way better energy systems in the future. Maybe, but we haven't yet. So right now, I'm not sure the AI is helping us survive. We're being very impressed with it. It's very lovely, but again, it might be escapism. And two, it comes with a cost, an environmental cost, at a time when we can't afford too many more environmental costs.
Yeah, I read a report last week or the week before that that the AI server farms for different large companies like Amazon, Google, Apple, that are doing this heavy research, that the energy consumption has tripled.
Yeah. So right now, I have a buddy in Iceland. Yeah, I have a buddy in Iceland. Right now, the majority of the country's electrical production goes into Bitcoin mining and AI. Which on a practical level for the Earth does nothing. Right? This is not growing crops. This is not saving the Earth in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's a frightening part of it. My whole thing, and I know that probably the majority of the people that are developing AI are good people, right? They don't have bad intentions.
I'm not saying that.
But no, I'm not saying that you are, but that are good people. But what the problem is we don't have a governing body. We don't have an ethics committee that is sitting around discussing the implications of the future. You would have thought that we learned our lesson with social media and how that run amok. Remember pop-up ads when that started in the 90s? How annoyed we were with that. And there was never a governing body behind the internet. We wanted it to be the Wild West. And
that's
kind
of the problem. Yeah. The whole tech growth thing. And so again, our technology is getting ahead of our ethics. It's getting ahead of our pragmatics. It's getting ahead of our legal system. And sometimes we're going to have to play catch up, and it's going to be a tight game to catch up. I don't know if we're really going to be ready for this, but it'll be a wild ride, right? We can say that much. It's already a wild ride. I mean, again, what is consciousness? Totally different than it was 10 years ago. What is it when we talk again? What's it going to look like? They're going to be brand new scientific discoveries, brand new things. So we're going somewhere really fast. Whether that's hell in a handbasket or a stairway to heaven, not sure, but we're going very, very quickly.
Thank you so much, Tok. What a great conversation. Where can everybody follow what you're doing?
Oh, just Google me with a name like mine. I'm pretty easy to find. You can always check out the USC site too.
Okay, very good. We've got links for you below, and I can't wait to get you back on the show and continue the conversation. Have a great night and happy teaching.
All right. Thanks very much, man. Thanks for having me on.
Great show. Thank you, Tok. Tok Thompson, everybody. And again, links for Tok are below. What a great conversation tonight. All of my favorite subjects. Everything happened tonight here on Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. And what are we doing tomorrow night? Tomorrow night, Kevin Randall is with us. All UFOs all night long. Until then, go Berkeley Tappy. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Special thanks to Bill, John, Dex, Jessica, Dennis, and Kevin. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music by Doug Aldrich. Intro, Space Boy. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2024 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Go Backley Tappy.